You're listening to a production of the National Media Archive. To learn more or volunteer, go to nationalmediaarchive.com.
Imagine waking up full of energy, ready to take on the day. You step out of bed, head to the bathroom, and zap. A static shock from the doorknob jolts you back to reality. Annoying, right? But what if I told you that electricity, the same force behind that little zap, can be both a minor nuisance and a life-threatening hazard? Let's kick off by understanding why a static shock usually just makes you jump, while household electricity can be deadly. The difference comes down to two key terms: current, measured in amperes or amps, and voltage, measured in volts. Think of amps as the amount of water flowing in a pipe, and volts as the water's pressure. Now, you might be wondering, if voltage sounds so powerful, why doesn't that static shock kill me? Great question, let's break it down. While static electricity can reach thousands of volts, it delivers only an infinitesimal amount of current far below what's dangerous. It's like having a water gun with super high pressure, but only a single drop comes out. So, next time you flinch at a doorknob, remember, it's not the volts alone that matter, it's the amps that can truly make electricity dangerous. Let's dive deeper. What exactly are current, voltage, and resistance? Picture electricity as water flowing through a pipe. The current is how much water moves per second, that's the amps. Voltage is like the water pressure, pushing the flow along. Resistance, measured in ohms, is the pipe's friction, slowing the water down. Now, here's a technical term, Ohm's law. It's the backbone of electrical science. Mathematically, it says voltage equals current times resistance V equals I times R. Why does this matter? Because it tells us how changing one factor influences the others. Suppose you increase voltage but keep resistance steady, the current goes up. Or if you increase resistance, less current flows for the same voltage. Simple, right? Now you might be thinking, is all resistance bad? Actually, resistance protects us. Think of rubber gloves electricians use. They add resistance, stopping dangerous currents from passing through the body. Understanding these basics is crucial, not just for engineers, but for anyone who plugs in a toaster or charges a phone. Electricity follows precise rules, and knowing them keeps us safe. Let me tell you a story about Ohm's law, or principle you've probably used without even realizing it. Ohm's law, named after physicist Georg Simon Ohm, is the foundation of every electrical safety standard. In its essence, Ohm's law helps us predict how much current will flow when we know the voltage and resistance. If you double the voltage across a wire but keep resistance the same, the current doubles too. That's why a 220-volt outlet is so much riskier than a 110-volt one, given the same resistance. But here's the conflict. Most people think the higher the voltage, the deadlier the shock. Not always true. It's the current, that is, the amps, that decides the outcome. For example, a stun gun may have thousands of volts, but its current is so tiny you'll just get startled, not seriously hurt. So, next time you see a warning for high volts, remember to ask yourself, how much current is really involved? That's the number to respect. Have you seen those scary warning signs on electrical panels? The skull and crossbones? The giant danger high voltage print? These warnings are there for a reason, but they can also be misleading. Now, you might be thinking, if high voltage is so dangerous, does that mean low voltage is safe? Not necessarily. People have been fatally shocked by as little as 42 volts under certain conditions. Here's the setup. We often equate more volts with more danger. The conflict? Even household voltages 110 or 230 volts are enough to kill, given the right circumstances. The real killer is the amount of current that flows through the body, which depends on both voltage and resistance. So, those warning signs? They're essential, but the story is deeper than just numbers. Resolution? Always treat any electrical source with respect, regardless of its voltage rating. Complacency is the real enemy here. It's not the volts that kill you, it's the amps. Ever heard that phrase? There's real science behind it. Let's break this down. Current measured in amps is what actually causes harm to the human body. Even a small current, like 10 milliamps, that's just 0.01 amps, can cause severe pain. Crank it up to 100 or 200 milliamps, and you're in life-threatening territory. Why is this? Because electrical current disrupts your heart's rhythm, a condition called ventricular fibrillation. That's a technical term for when your heart can't pump blood. Effectively, think of a drummer losing the beat in a marching band. Now you might ask, does that mean voltage doesn't matter? Not quite. Without enough voltage, there's no current flow. But if the amps are high enough, even at lower voltages, the shock can be fatal. So the real lesson? Never underestimate low voltage sources. It's the amps that deliver the punch, and your body's resistance is the only thing standing in the way. So, how much current does it take to cause real damage? Let's set up the scenario. A person comes into contact with a live wire. If more than 10 milliamps of current passes through, muscle contractions can freeze your grip, literally trapping you. Now, if the current rises to between 100 and 200 milliamps, the consequences turn deadly. Heart muscles may go into fibrillation. Above 200 milliamps, severe burns and loss of consciousness are likely, and the heart can even stop beating. Here's the conflict. Even if someone receives a massive jolt, survival is possible if medical help is immediate. Why? Because advanced cardiac life support can reboot the heart, much like restarting a frozen computer. But don't let that give you a false sense of safety. The window to act is short, and permanent damage can occur in seconds. Bottom line, any current above 10 milliamps is dangerous. Treat all electric shocks seriously, because sometimes there's no second chance. At this point, you might be asking, if amps are so dangerous, does voltage even matter? Absolutely. Voltage, more technically, potential differences essential because it's what pushes current through your body. No voltage means no current. That's why birds can perch on high voltage power lines without harm. They aren't touching anything else to create a path for current. Here's a technical term, closed circuit. For electricity to flow, there must be a complete path from one point of voltage to another. If you're only touching one wire, you're safe. Touch 2 points with different voltages, danger zone. Think of it like a slide at a playground. No height difference, no sliding, no voltage difference, no current. So remember, voltage creates the conditions for danger, but amps deliver the harm. Both matter. Never let your guard down around electricity. Here's something most people overlook. Your body's resistance to electricity isn't fixed. It changes, and those changes can mean the difference between a mild shock and a fatal one. Let's set up an example. Dry skin can have a resistance up to 500 ohms. You're practically insulated. But get your skin wet, and resistance can drop to just 10 ohms. That's like swapping a thick, sturdy pipe for a thin, leaky one. The conflict arises when conditions change unexpectedly. Say, you're working with sweaty hands or standing in water. Suddenly, safe voltages become lethal. Here's another technical term, impedance. It's like resistance, but factors in frequency. With alternating current, AC, your body's impedance can drop even lower, increasing danger. So, resolution. Always keep hands dry when dealing with electricity and wear shoes or gloves with high resistance. Small choices can save your life. Let's talk about a critical but overlooked factor, the path electricity takes through your body. Not all shocks are created equal. Suppose current passes from hand to foot. The resistance might be about 500 ohms, but from ear to ear, that drops to just 100 ohms. That's a huge difference. The conflict is clear. Some paths send current straight through the heart or brain, causing maximum harm. Others might just tingle or burn. Here's a technical term, current path. It determines which organs are affected. Think of it like a shortcut. Some routes hit all the critical stops. Resolution. Always be aware of both hands and feet when working near electricity. Even an accidental touch can create a deadly circuit. Now, you might remember hearing, only amps kill, not volts. But electrical danger is more complex, a combination of voltage, current, resistance, frequency, and even exposure time. Let's set up a scenario. A static shock delivers thousands of volts, but the current is so brief you don't even notice. Meanwhile, a low voltage device with just the right conditions can be deadly if contact lasts. Here's the conflict. Many accidents happen because people underestimate one factor, like duration or frequency. Frequency matters because alternating current, AC, is more dangerous than direct current, DC, at the same voltage and current. Now, you might ask, how do I protect myself? The answer is multi-layered, insulation, proper equipment, dry conditions, and most importantly, respect for all sources of electricity. Resolution. Think holistically about electrical safety. Every factor counts, and ignoring just one can lead to disaster. Let's wrap up with a big picture perspective. Electricity is a paradox. It powers our world. yet it holds the potential for catastrophe if mismanaged. Respecting electricity isn't about fearing it, but understanding its rules. Here's the setup. Handled with care, electricity lights up cities and runs hospitals. Handled carelessly, it can take a life in seconds. The conflict is our tendency to get complacent. A frayed cord, a damp floor, a missing cover, small oversights with big consequences. So, next time you flip a switch or plug in a device, remember the science, voltage, current, and resistance all play a part. Stay mindful, stay safe. And here's my final thought. Electricity is a powerful ally when you respect its rules, and a dangerous foe when you don't. The choice, as always, is yours.